Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be for all of you listening out there across the world. Welcome to a brand new edition of Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Bryan Ouellette, coming to you live from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains on this May 18th, 2021. Tonight we're going to talk about esoteric mysticism. Well, at least what it's like to learn it, what it's like to live it. We have Joy Keeling here, one of my students, tonight to talk about this. We also have a surprise. Father Chris Yates from Australia has called into the switchboard. He'll be spending today's show with us to talk a little bit about his work. And we actually have him booked next month for you, a special show with just him. So got a lot of things to talk about tonight. And also we're taking open lines. So the number to call is 516-453-0138. You can call anytime and get yourself into the queue. We might take you on the air. Don't go away. Everyone, I'm glad that you're joining us tonight for tonight's show, Vestiges After Dark. I know that we always have a different experience just about every week now that we're doing this every week. And you can always catch us usually on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we always have a different subject. And with callers and open lines, you never know what's going to happen. We also look at the chat room from time to time. Sister Mary Joan will be monitoring the chat as well as Sister Maximilian. They're both in the chat room right now. And if you got questions for us at some point throughout the show, we might take one of your questions. So go ahead and start asking them, and they'll start making a reference. And at the appropriate time, we might even answer your question. But better than that is to call into the show, because it is a talk show, and it's much better to talk to you over the lines rather than through a chat room. Makes it more interesting for the audience too. I'm sure you agree. And that number to call is 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. Call anytime. We might not take you right away, so don't hang up just because, it might be a few minutes before we get to your call. Might be several minutes. You never know. But stay in the queue, and if we can, we'll take your call. It depends on volume, depends on where the subject matter goes, all of that good stuff. Vestiges After Dark always needs your support, and I just want to mention real quick that there are many ways that you can support this show. And it's not just financial. Of course, if you do want to help the church, because the church is what sponsors this show, the church is what pays for this show. So if you would like to help the ministry to be able to continue to provide this show, you can go over to the website at esotericcatholic.org or nicholean.org, nicholean.org. Either one is the same website. And there's a donate now button. You can set up a donation. What the church really needs, though, is monthly pledges. So if you'd be able and willing to set up one of those, that really helps us budget to create even better content and do new and greater things for you at some point in the future. We always need that help. So if you are so inspired, if you like this show, if you believe in what this show represents and the ministry as well, then help us out, because we don't charge anybody for anything. So it becomes very difficult to run a ministry strictly on charity. So you are the charity, okay? You are the ones that make that possible. So if you can give, please give. But that's not the only way that you can help support the show. Wherever you listen to this show, whether it be on iTunes or YouTube, like it, subscribe to the channel. If you're on iTunes and you see us, if that's where you get this content, make sure that you like us, give a review. All of those things help to affect the algorithm that puts the show even in a more visible spot on the internet, which will increase the audience and thus a larger audience. Could mean at some point in the future sponsorships through advertisements that could even bring, even more financing to the ministry. So these are different little ways that you can help the show out, spreading the word. If you see the tweet, go out on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you see the notifications that we've gone live, retweet it. These are little tiny things that you can do. It doesn't cost you anything other than a moment, and it does so much for spreading the news about Vestiges After Dark. And to make this show a real interesting show, call volume is what we really would like to see. Unfortunately, podcasting, as I've said so many times before, is really, people are used to listening on demand, listening when they want to. A lot of podcasts just pre-record and do these fancy edits. So live is a little bit more difficult to generate when you're not on terrestrial radio. It's difficult to generate the audience volume for live. We have a lot of on-demand listeners, but we don't necessarily always have a lot of live listeners. So these are little things you can do to help the show out, to assure that it succeeds. If you really like it, you want to keep having it week to week, then these are the things you need to do. Either support it financially, support it with just retweeting it and getting the word out, or subscribing, liking it, giving reviews, telling people about it, that type of thing. And that helps us. We have seen a very interesting week. As you know, for the last couple of weeks, last couple of shows, I've been asking my audience, all of you, that 3 p.m. Eastern time, regardless of where that is for you in the world, we're all doing it hopefully at the same time, putting out the intention, not religiously. This is not a prayer. This is just an intention, affirming our position, metaphysically, you might say, to create an intention where the COVID-19 pandemic ends along with all of its negative social effects. And one of those things one of the things that we need to see is the end of these lockdowns, the end of these masks, the end of, the social distancing and all these things that are very detrimental to healthy society. And that's been our intention for the last few weeks. And my goodness, has it not been working? I think it's been working wonderfully. It's a process, but I think we've had some great progress so far. And this past week, we have seen what was an official announcement from the CDC. Unexpectedly, even apparently, the President of the United States wasn't even informed it was coming out. At least that's what the rumor is. Who knows anymore, what you can believe. But the fact of the matter is, it did come out of nowhere, and they said vaccinated individuals do not need to wear masks indoors anymore. And on top of that, even more surprising to me was that big corporations have jumped on board with this. I think it was Walmart who said that not only that vaccinated customers don't need to wear masks, but their employees don't either. I thought that was a real good step forward, and I really feel that our attention is what's making that possible. You don't need a whole lot of people. You just need a collective that's large enough with the same singular intent and passionate enough to make it happen, to affect the malleability of the cosmos. And this is proof positive, which is very much the subject of tonight's show, esoteric mysticism, and where that comes from and where it fits into the entire paradigm that we always work within. We try to get rid of paradigms in esoteric mysticism, but there's always going to be paradigms in which you have to operate. And part of being successful in this work, as well as being successful in existence, is knowing how to work through the various paradigms, not challenging them, and rising above them and maintaining control over them. And that's largely what I teach my students. Because even though, you know me as a bishop, you know me as an exorcist, you know me as all these things, but I'm a lot more than just those things. And we don't really, even though we touch on religion in the classes that I teach, we don't always view it through the lens of religion. Most of the time, we're viewing it from a very objective metaphysical standpoint. It's a very philosophical class. It challenges belief systems. It can be very uncomfortable. And fortunately, we have Joy Keeling tonight, who's one of my students. There might be more students calling in. I'm seeing there are some people on hold, so that might be some of my students. So we might hear from others tonight. Who knows? But it's very interesting. And it's something that anybody can sign up for if they feel so inclined. That can also be done at the website. It's not, I didn't want to do this show as like a promotion, come and be my student. It was more about letting you know some of the other things that I do and why you might see some aspects of my nature out there in the world that might not be something that you'd expect from a Catholic bishop. And I guess that fits in very well tonight also with the other side of our show, because unexpectedly, Father Chris Yates from Australia, who knows a lot about what it's like to be an independent a Catholic clergy, he's here tonight as well to talk to us about his work. And we even have a show scheduled, as I said at the beginning of this show, next month. I think it's on the 8th, where we will be talking with him. And we haven't exactly decided or pinned down which topic we're going to cover. We'll probably have him on several times for other topics as well. But you're going to meet him tonight. He's been a follower of mine on Twitter for a while, and he's also part of the Nicolaitan Catholic Network, our own social media that we set up for the church via Mighty Networks, that also is available to you free of charge. You can come over and become a member there, and you don't have to worry about censorship, and you don't have to worry about pissing off the powers that be where they put you on a ban. I mean, we've got very simple terms of service. There are rules, obviously, because we want it to be a comfortable place for everybody. So if trolling's not going to be tolerated. Yes, we're going to take moderator action against that. We'll get fair warning, though, and we'll actually communicate with you, unlike Twitter and Facebook. So, there's great advantages. Come on over. It's completely free, and it gives you access to all the things that we are doing in this ministry. And I can tell you, it's a lot more than just exorcism. Exorcism is a very small part. It might be the primary outreach of the ministry, but it's a very, very small part of the work that we do. And, Sister Mary Joan, who's with us tonight, can even affirm that. Right, Sister? I mean, that's kind of, I think, a misunderstanding that a lot of people have, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Exorcism is what we're kind of known for, but that's a very tiny, minute part of what we do. A lot of what we do is just spiritual counseling and you with your teaching, and then just trying to be inspirational to folks that might need a pick-me-up. A lot of it's just being like a spiritual counselor. Yeah.
And I think that's also part of this show. I don't think people necessarily see Vestiges After Dark as a ministerial outreach, but in a lot of ways it really is. And I know we go outside of the boundaries of Christianity, and we go outside of the boundaries of convention. And you might say, well, that doesn't seem like it'd be very suitable to ministry, but actually it's a very essential part of ministry. And I hope Father Yates tonight will be able to, we'll bring him on shortly, but I hope he can even maybe add some insight, because I think he gets that, and there's not a lot of clergy in the world that do. So, he's definitely an ally in that respect.
Yeah, the more open you are to people of different backgrounds, different faiths, and the more, approachable you are, the more receptive they're going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we are going to hopefully have more students. So if you are a student and you're on hold, stay on hold. I'll bring you on when we start, going to open lines, because I don't know who's out there. And, the only student that called in before we were ready to go live was Joy Keeling. So we can definitely bring Joy on tonight. Most of the audience already knows her. She's been a co-host on this show before, and she is a regular open invitation to call in anytime she feels like talking about whatever topics we have, because her insights are always so useful. She has her own podcast now. You can also access that at the Nicolan Network, and she can tell you where you can find her on YouTube as well as Blog Talk Radio. How are you doing tonight, Joy?
Well, I'm hanging in there.
You're hanging in there. Are you not feeling well?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I came down with another episode of the barfs. So,
oh, goodness.
Yeah, that was yesterday. I'm hanging in there. I'm doing what I can.
Okay, well, you know what? If you need to step away, don't feel like you can't just because it's live, step away if you need to. But I appreciate you being here anyway. It means a lot.
Yeah, well, I love the show.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think the audience loves you. Honestly, we always hear such great things about the times that you call in and your input that you have given this show in the past, and most of your insights are unique. And I think part of that's because you've been a student of mine for so many years now, and you even have gone through, as you've been very open about, being a client and having to work through spiritual crisis and what that means. And I think a lot of the audience is familiar with that. And if they're not, they can go back and listen to the archives and find out more about all of those encounters. But you get to see things from different eyes, and it casts a different light on the same material. So it's always interesting to me that when I teach esoteric mysticism, which is a subject matter that very few people know anything about, it's always interesting to hear how my students have been affected by the content. So always a wonderful thing. So thank you for being with us tonight, Joy.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks. Father Chris Yates, he's calling in from Australia. So it's like daytime out there for you, right? Right, Father?
Yeah, it's a lovely sunny day here on the east coast of Australia. I'm sort of 2 hours north of Sydney, so to help your call pinpoint where I am. But as you can hear from my accent, I'm originally English, but I've been here for 11 years.
Oh, okay. So you moved. You were born in England.
Yeah, I was born in Manchester.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I got you. Oh, that's fantastic. So.
Manchester United.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's some football fans.
In fact, I'm from Trafford.
I love it.
That Mancunian accent.
Yeah, definitely. Well, before we get started into the subject, because this is kind of a different deviation from where I was going to go, but I think it really works because so much of what esoteric mysticism came out of my own personal spiritual explorations, and also having a lot of experience and background in the Western mystery traditions and my study of the occult, which led to me being very effective in the work that I do now as a Catholic bishop, as a Catholic exorcist. I'm very equipped for dealing with things that are sometimes outside the box. And anybody that works in exorcism ministry from this perspective knows that it's almost always going to be outside the box. There are very few textbook cases, and it can be actually very detrimental to the success of a client's particular crisis if we are only looking at it through one direction. And that's what, unfortunately, most Roman Catholic exorcists are doing. It's like there's either angels or there's demons, but there's nothing else. And that's not necessarily very effective. And that's why we have talked so many times on this show before about the 4 types of demons that we deal with, and really only one of them is a true demon in the Judeo-Christian sense. And I'm not going to get into all that tonight because I think we've talked about that already several times before. But it is something to keep in mind that my own explorations are what led me to these particular realizations that became a book that I wrote on esoteric mysticism that no publisher would touch with a 10-foot pole. People are always asking me, have you written a book? How do I get your book? Well, the publishers won't publish it, and I don't have time to self-publish and promote. I just don't. Maybe someday, if I can get the time to really sit down and do it right, and even hire an editor to go back and make sure that it flows well and, there's no rough edges. I'm not going to just put some manuscript out there and bind it together because Amazon lets me. I want you to have a good, quality piece of content. And so those are things that I'm not willing to publish the book until then. However, that being said, I did turn the book into a course. And like I said, if you're interested in learning esoteric mysticism, which we are going to be talking about extensively tonight, you can sign up on the website. Just go to webinars. It's a webinar. You can watch it. The class runs live every Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern time. But it's all on demand. Every course has been recorded. Every class has been recorded, and you can watch it on your own time. If you don't want to be there live, if you can't be there live, and if you're worried about all of the years that you missed, you can go back and watch those too. They're all available. So that's something that, we offer, and I think students have found it to be very useful. And we've got a really good group of students right now, which Joy Keeling is one of them. But esoteric mysticism, before we get started and really talk about it, I just wanted to mention that esoteric mysticism is really, you can break it down to simply being a model for dealing with some of the modern spiritual dissonance that exists today. Because so much of the content that we have has become so ancient and so divorced from our reality now as modern individuals living in a very strange future. One that is ruled by technology, one that is ruled by mass media, social media, that we're very divorced. And it's a very secularized society as well. We don't have really the mindset that the ancients had to explore spiritual matters in a way or in a context that could make these realizations natural and possible for just the average person. So all we have left is religion. And that's even become very unpalatable to most people, I find. So they're not getting their spiritual nourishment from even that. So what I decided to do is create a model that speaks to the current individual, but at the same time doesn't make it any easier to swallow. It's just using language that I think is a little bit easier for modern people to digest, but not necessarily makes it taste any better. It just means that they're not going to be throwing it back up. It just means that, they'll be keeping the content and they'll be able to process the content. Whether or not they like that, whether or not they enjoy it is another matter. We started the class with about 2/3 more than we currently have. We're down by about 2/3 of the original class size. And that was expected because the material is challenging. And I think Joy Keeling can tell you a lot about that. I'm going to give the floor to her here to discuss how she experienced the initial aspects coming from her own paradigms and her own biases that we all have. And she knows this, and then came into this course unexpectedly, not really knowing what to expect. What's esoteric mysticism? Sounds kind of cool, but what is it? And then you find that all of these things that you've held so close to your identity are breaking down and creating these open wounds that fester if you let them, and if you don't tend to them, you really do become spiritually infected with the material. It's difficult to swallow, and it throws a lot of people off, and a lot of people quit. Joy was one of the ones that didn't quit. She was there on day one, and she has been practically at every single class that we've had. I think she's only missed maybe, I could probably count on one hand how many classes she's missed, maybe one or two. But she can tell you from we have, as far as like worldviews go, we're on very different sides of the spectrum. But when it comes to mysticism and understanding the higher principles at work, that's where, unity and wholeness is found. And I think she's starting to taste that. I think she's starting to touch that. Joy's had a very challenging life, as she's talked about very openly. And she came to this ministry and required its help at one point. So she's experienced the entire gamut. So health willing, she can talk a little bit about what that's been like for her. So Joy, go ahead and let's hear it.
Gosh, well, I had no idea what to expect. I initially wasn't even going to follow you on Twitter, but for some reason I thought, I'm in seminary and I'm going into this stuff. People keep coming to me with demon cases. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and follow. And then you started talking about teaching a webinar and, what people would think of that. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll sign up. And especially once you started mentioning some of the things that were going to be in it. I'm like, dude, I've been studying this my whole life. I love this stuff. And, but I wasn't expecting to be changed so much by it, because you think taking a class, it's just putting information in your head. And for a while, that was what was going on. It was just cramming information in my head. And then at some point, I started processing it on a deeper level and began freaking out. Everybody else was freaking out too. At different points, going, wait a minute, life doesn't make sense anymore. What about this thing? And, it's something that we all kind of went through, because, once you get enough of this information in you, it processes deep down at a level that you may not be aware of. Mm. And eventually that understanding starts bubbling up to the surface. And that's a very important thing.
Yeah.
Because that means it's hitting you at a deeper level. It's going to catch. It's going to stick with you.
Yeah.
And now you've been transformed by it, and you can't go back. Because if you go back, you're basically at the dangers of dabbling there. That you've opened this door, and now you don't know how to close it, and you don't know how to manage it. Yeah. But if you stick with it, you learn how to manage it. And that's why it's been so important for me, especially as a client, because I've been fighting off all these demons, as you put it so, eloquently, I was a demon factory. And, in order to fight off my demons, I had to know what they were. Mm-hmm. And I had to be able to face them and identify them and work through them, because the first one was a wrathful spirit, and that one was suppressing all of the traumas related to that wrathful spirit when he was alive. And once you removed him, the traumas that he was suppressing began bubbling up to the surface and becoming their own demons. It was like an infection. And so in order to fight this off, I needed more than just a therapist. I needed someone who could talk me through the esoteric aspects of it, how to battle my own psyche.
Right.
And, the class really helped me with that. Speaking with you helped me with that. I've come a very long way.
Yeah.
And I've healed up a whole lot, and it's because of being in your class and learning this stuff.
That really makes me feel good. I mean, not that it's not about me at all, but I mean, it makes me feel good that the class has served the purpose that it was created to meet. It is about healing. I call it learning by osmosis, because so much of the learning is unlearning, but at the same time, it's also processing information at a level that is far and above your rational cognitive faculties. It's dealing with things that you don't even realize you're dealing with. It's all happening at a much higher level, and it takes time to learn to become aware of that again. See, now the ancients, I think if like, let's say time travel was possible, you and I are both big Star Trek fans, so you know what I'm talking about. If we could do a little slingshot around the sun, in the Enterprise, and go back to, maybe 3,000 years ago, I would expect that that nothing I would teach would be terribly shocking to the ancient philosophers of back then, because they would have been far more connected and know how to, detect that learning by osmosis. They'd see the process more naturally. But today we're so cut off, because from the time we're born, we are being conditioned to move away from those spiritual realizations. And so you have to kind of unlearn all that conditioning and get back. Yeah. Go ahead, Father Chris. Yes.
I'm sorry if I can come in. I mean, I think what strikes me, because I completely agree with what you're saying. And by the way, I'm a Star Trek fan as well. So
great.
That's a thing in common. But I think, if you look at the history of what's happened within the Western Church, and it is within the Western Church. I mean, I think the Easterns have a lot to teach us about this, actually. But in the Western Church, we've had this sort of hyper-rationalization, which, because if you look back in the history of the Western Church, St. Teresa of Avila with her levitations, and her ecstasies, and mysticism was just a part of life. I think you're right, and this kind of strange morphing that's happened in the Western Church. I mean, you get people like Bultmann who want to demythologize the Bible, take all of the sort of magic bits out because it doesn't fit with that empirical worldview. Yeah. And yet this is also a church that proclaims that bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ, and that a man rose from the dead. So it seems it's totally at war with its own philosophy, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And then post Vatican II, we've had this simultaneous opening up to the world, but at the same time, the sort of impoverishment of the sort of, for example, monasticism that St. Teresa of Avila benefited from. So it's no surprise to me that we've got this sort of disjointed spiritual war going on within the Western Church, the contemporary Western Church, because I think that it became the sort of the victims of the experts, or the experts say we're to do away with all of that nonsense. But actually, it's not nonsense, and it's not gone away. And people are a spiritual reality, and not merely it can't be reduced down to a series of logical propositions.
Yes, I could not have said that better myself.
Sorry.
No, it's you're exactly on target.
I think that's why there's a spiritual sickness at work in the West. It's why Christianity has declined. And if you look at where Christianity, I'm sorry, I'll stop talking in a second. But if you look at where Christianity has declined, spiritualism has not declined. This great myth that somehow, if we convince Christians that all of this is nonsense, that somehow we'll all go back to being, we'll all go on to be just simply rational, functioning biological robots. That's not true. People take gap years in Australia and go off to Tibet, to experience something mystical, because of course they can't experience it at their local parish church. Anyway. That's just a quick reflection on why I think there's a gap, and why I think ministries like yours are so important, and why they're actually taking hold.
And and it is interesting that we have attracted people from all over the world in very many unexpected ways. I'm always interested to find how people found me, and in a lot of cases, I always expect or anticipate that it's ghost adventures, but in most cases, it's not. and that always surprises me. Because I'll say, oh, you must have seen me on the Travel Channel. You must have seen me on the Ghost Adventures or whatever. You know, it airs on different networks in different countries, and they're like, Ghost Adventures, what's that? You know, they have found me sometimes through this show, or maybe they heard me give a talk somewhere. It's a very interesting dynamic, and I've always mystified by what it is that I have done that has attracted such an international base of interest. And I really think it comes down to what you just said, and it's that the world is looking. They haven't lost their spiritual center, they haven't lost their connection, but they're thirsting for a way to find it, to realize it, to manifest it in a way that is meaningful, because that's what spirituality ultimately is all about. And and
also we need to be able to have a language for it as
yes.
well.
Yes.
You know, I remember a long time ago when I was a policeman. Me and Sister Mary Joan have that in common.
We need to have a talk.
We do. I was a policeman for 10 years in Oxford and in London, and I came across a 16-year-old. He was a boy, obviously, but he was a big lad, and he had been arrested. He picked up a well-known local kind of, you know, a man with mental health problems, but was a friendly sort of local in the country. He picked him up in his car for no reason, driven him out, and murdered him. And he was in custody for that offence. And he had to be relocated from one cell to another. And I went to do that. And I looked in, and I was with other policemen who were not. Policemen are probably amongst the least religious people in the UK. And we looked at him, and, you know, I mean, I would now say he was clearly possessed. Now, I don't believe all murderers are possessed. I think this was an exception. I'm not pardoning people from their sins, you know. But there was something wrong with him, really wrong with him. You know, his eyes were black, and it was other officers with me said, "Whoa, you know, not easily scared people." But there was something about him that was sick. But there was no language for my fellow officers to use to describe what they were experiencing, you know.
Yeah.
And when I look back, I mean, I think that's the clearest example of a deeply demonic possession I've ever seen. It's so happened.
Yeah, it's happened to me too, Father. Yeah,
sure.
I can go back in hindsight and think of several arrests that we made, being ignorant at the time, and just all of us felt this overwhelming evil from that person, and they were just devoid. You would look them in the eye and there's just nothing there, and you could feel it come off of them. And of course we would akin it to mental illness, or they were on drugs or whatnot. But knowing what I know now, oh yeah, I definitely dealt with more than one possessed person.
But actually we've reached a point in culture where even to say that there's evil coming from that person actually is not a default language for people. You know, even that very basic level of speaking about it. I mean, it so happens that, you know, and I'm sure our Lord was at work, that a year later I was in the Crown Court, and somebody was being sentenced to life. And so, you know, they tended to ask the police officers to go into the court just in case they jumped the dock.
Security,
and, and it was the same lad being sentenced to life. You know,
wow.
and again, our eyes met. And I think there was no mistaking, you know. I mean, I would now look back and say that, you know, that was the devil saying, "I've got him. I've ruined his life."
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I've temporarily won. I don't believe he ever permanently wins, of course, but
right.
You know, I've got him for now in time. So, you know, but you know, and the point of that isn't to tell a kind of war story, but to emphasize that ordinary, normal, created human beings experience these. Now we also experience positive things, but we tend the negative ones tend to stick with us. That's the way the human mind works. But we're experiencing these things, but because the church has retreated, because the church hasn't dared to, you know, conflict with this hyper rationalism, people are left without a language for it, and I think that's what they're reaching out for in trying to find you.
I agree completely,
and people like me.
Makes sense.
It's the foundation also to the Esoteric Mysticism course. One of the things that my students will tell you, one of the primary focus that we have is archetypal communication. It's almost exclusively what they have learned up until this point. There's been a few deviations here and there, but it always comes back to archetypal communication, because I feel that that is the best language for us, because it connects the empirical to the less rational. It connects the corporeal to the incorporeal. It makes it possible for us to have a dialogue with these things that are outside of the framework. And Carl Jung we can thank for making that possible. Perhaps one of my other students, Tiffany, who's here with us tonight, can give some insight also into what her experiences have been, and let's see how they compare to Joy's, and also what Father Chris has said about communication. So Tiffany, what would you say would be your experience coming in? You've also been a student that's, I believe, with us since the beginning, were you not?
I came in probably about 2 months into the course. But I have to say, and I may have missed a class or two after that, but I have to say it's completely changed my life. My outlook, how I understand the world around me, how I process my traumas. When I joined, I was absolutely drowning in my traumas. I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why did all these bad things keep happening to me? Like why? What was the point of that?
Yeah.
But the further along I got into the class, understanding my own archetypal patterns, I learned that it was me. It was me. This is how I process the world around me. So, but it's done a great deal to allow me to release it.
Yeah.
So I mean, in that sense, it really has changed my life, that I'm not dwelling on these things that have hurt me, that I
awesome.
sat with.
And would you say it relates to the fact that now you have like as Father Chris was saying, a way of communicating with the universe that you were completely cut off from before that you took this class and learned how to do it?
I would say absolutely. I mean, I've always had experiences with the divine. I have, but then I've also, it feels like I learned the really hard, like it takes the dark to really force me into the light.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not sure if that's a good way to explain it. It really isn't, but.
No, but I mean, I think
but that's how I learned it. That's part of my pattern, so.
It's a dark night of the soul experience, I think. It's related to that. And if you study St. John of the Cross, you know all about this. If you've ever read anything that St. John of the Cross has ever, put out there, a contemporary of St. Teresa of Avila, who we were talking about before, the dark night of the soul is sort of fundamental to one's spiritual progress. It always, in my experience, precedes a great spiritual breakthrough. What really, though, I think takes people off guard is that process can take years. And we're very much, again, one of our disconnects in modern society is that we want things now. We're so used to being able to get things so efficiently. Yeah. Technology has made everything so instant.
Instant answers, instant gratification.
Yes. And that instant gratification has become a way of life.
Also,
go ahead.
Well, I think we also confuse discomfort with evil.
Yeah.
That people that if we're having troubles and trials in life, if we are unsatisfied with who we are, and by the way, we're supposed to be, because because we're called to be perfect saints, and therefore we should never be self-satisfied, because we're unlikely to achieve this side of glory. But if people are feeling bad about their lives and their actions and their sins and what have you, that's not the devil at work in their life. That's probably the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Because who is it that wants you to be better? It's God.
Yeah.
And I think
right.
I understand why a lot of Christians are worried about the sorts of things that we're speaking about, but they don't need to be. I mean, I think as Bishop Robert Barron points out, and he talks about St. John of the Cross, you know, and and St. Teresa of Avila, about this inner castle, you know, of security and safety, which allows the other things to be experienced. And the inner castle are the creeds and the revelation that, you know, the scriptures, and that these things are not contrary to that. You know,
right.
the very people who have been fed and have fed us from the basis of the scriptures and the tradition and the creeds have experienced these things. And so, you know, I think if people are feeling bad about how they're living their lives, then they should be open to the idea actually that pain, that dark night of the soul, is in fact the work of the Holy Spirit. And the good news is that God wants to bring you through that and to the full fruition of being alive, you know, with Him.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree with that as well.
It's very eloquently put. And I think it is, again, something that is very much a disconnect for most people. We all hear it as clergy. You know, I'm sure, Father, you've experienced this same thing where over and over again people are saying, the why me? Why would God do this? If He loves me so much, if He's so powerful, why is He letting this happen? And it's such a common, I think, very human thing. And yet at the same time, I'm hearing a dog. Whose dog is it?
I'm muting myself. That's me. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, it's fine.
Yeah, mine are asleep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess he has something to say about this, but the fact is, we don't really understand the process and what this is now all about. You know, and I think that's really where we're coming to in theology is when you read the scriptures, when you read the Gospels, when you really read them, you don't read them through the lens of the rose-colored glasses that you want to put on and, you know, pretend that everything is just wonderful. It's a very difficult, dark, and disturbing story. If the Gospels do not disturb you, then you are not reading the Gospels. You're imprinting on them. You're making them something other than what they are. They're supposed to disturb us. They're supposed to make us uncomfortable to the degree that it inspires change. It's the only thing that really does create change and reverses the direction of entropy in a universe that is dying, and everything here is dying from the smallest cell all the way up to the largest star in the galaxies of the universe. Everything is dying. Everything's burning out eventually. And the way that we reverse that, and that's the entire message of the gospel, which is basically learning how to conquer the processes of entropy, which for human beings, that's death. So the Gospels talk specifically about death and then eternal life as being the counter to it. And that's what it's really all about. But I mean, if we don't know how to be motivated to move through those challenges and difficulties, and the real, I think, genius to it all, which is, again, shows the genius of God and of Jesus Christ, is that He uses the devil against Himself. So it's like everything that the devil attempts to do is ultimately a means to making salvation even possible, or even right down to original sin. Original sin might be ultimately the worst thing that we could ever have conceived of, the worst thing that we could have done, violated creation. And yet at the same time, if it weren't for that original sin, we would never have come into the intimate relationship that now is possible with Jesus Christ. So even that was used completely against the very forces of darkness that, you know, made it possible. So even evil is working for the greater good of God and doesn't even know it. And that is something that I think human beings have to rise above to fully realize, because we have such a kindergarten type of mentality. I wouldn't even say, maybe not even kindergarten, I'd say maybe a preschool mentality of our relationship with God. We really don't teach our societies around the world how to develop that intimacy. Even the church is terribly failing in that.
I don't think we teach. I think the church has failed to teach many things. I mean, you know, my other half's involved in the education world and about direct instruction and phonemic awareness, all this sort of stuff about how the science of children learning to read. And there's so much pushback on that. And you know, I was at a lecture last night where they say, no, direct instruction is the way to go. We stopped doing it in 1975 and in Australia, and things have sort of descended after that. And I was thinking to myself, oh, in the church we did that way before that. You know?
Yeah.
And so we're surprised that attendance goes down, that numbers of baptisms are decreasing. Well, we're not teaching people anything. They come in and they color in some sheets at the back of the church, and they're told Jesus is lovely. And you think, have you ever read this?
Yeah.
No, they haven't. They haven't.
You know.
Yeah, it's not a huggy, happy go lucky story.
No. I mean, it's just extraordinary. So we shouldn't be surprised. And I think, you know, the fight back has to be, you know, we live in an age where more people are literate than ever before, where they'll listen to a 2-hour podcast, you know. And therefore, there's no excuse for us to be failing to teach people the deep truths of the gospel and of lived reality and of what's going on in the world around us, both spiritually, metaphysically, you know, as well as practical, and to descend the gospel into some kind of, you know, vague social justice outreach is just well, that is evil.
Yeah.
It's an eye roller. Yeah.
Well, it just I think it just marginalizes it down. It's basically another version of prosperity gospel. It reduces it to nothing. I mean, it becomes pointless at that point. And
not distinctive.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's all just another ego gratification. And that's the other part of what I teach in esoteric mysticism is learning how to identify how much of a hold our egos have over ourselves and how detrimental that is to spiritual development and growth and intimacy with God and all these things that we talk about wanting but don't really know how to get. And part of the reason why we don't know how to get it is the ego's always in the way. And when you create a religion around your ego, which is what a lot of these pastors have done, well, then you're not going to make any spiritual progress, and you're going to actually take everyone down with you. And they are, and they do. And that's kind of another side of the damage that has been done to the church, because it's not just the people leaving in droves from the traditional churches, but it's also all of those that have been blindly manipulated by these modern gospels that are not gospels at all. There's no good news about it. It sounds like good news because it's what people want to hear, but if you're getting what you want to hear, then you're not getting the gospel, and there's nothing that can do to save you. That's nothing that can do to.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think there's a really penetrating question that Jesus asks frequently in the gospel, which, because I actually loved your reference there to ego and the challenge of ego. You know, we all wrestle with this, but the obstacle that ego can be to a real encounter with the real Christ, not the one that you want him to be.
Yeah.
He asks people who he says, "What do you want me to do for you?" You know, we talk about his healing, but before the healing, he says, "What do you want me to do for you?" And another way of understanding that question is, do you actually want to be healed? Because some people love their scars.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they don't truly love them, but they have a grip on them.
Well, they become part of their identity.
And it's not. Yeah, exactly. And really that question is, are you ready to let go of that identity and take on a new identity, which is a healed, a fully holy, made whole person by me. Yeah. And that's I think it's a beautiful, penetrating question, and it's also a fair question in terms of, you know, not all people are ready for healing, and what do we do to prepare the ground, to prepare the way, as John the Baptist did, you know, for people to be able to reach the point where they say, actually, I do want to be healed, and I know you're the healer.
So, yeah, I mean, that's so well said. So well said. You know, I'm looking at the switchboard here. We have some people on hold. I don't know if these are students or if it's just questions coming in, but I'd like to get to one open line before we go to the break at the top of the hour. So, area code 323, calling in from California. Hello, you're on the air.
Should be Julie.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hey, hi.
Hi.
Yep, that's Julie. Hey, Julie.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was going to be the first call. Okay. How's everyone?
Doing well.
Can you guys hear
We're
me?
doing good.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
Oh, okay. So, because I recently talked to Sister Mary Joan last week, and she was having to call into the show tonight. Well, so what happens? Since the last time that I called, I've been doing what I was told to do, try to get rid of this spirit, but it calmed down for a bit, or I wasn't really hearing it as much. But then what happens that I think it was the weekend following Easter. It was Sunday afternoon. I was in my room, and for some reason, when I looked, there's a space between it's a wall space between my closet and my bedroom door, and I look at it, and it's just like looks like I'm seeing a face like popping up, and then from there, I start seeing like there's whatever this thing is. It's projecting these images onto whatever I see. Like I was start seeing a happy face, like on a tree. I'll be sitting at a tree, and then I see a facial expression, or even anywhere. I'll be looking at the floor. I mean, anywhere. It's just even on my food as a reason. Like this thing will make these images, and I mean I don't even know what any of this means. But what I've started recently noticing is that, like, I see figures that aren't even human looking, and it's tripping me out because I started feeling also recently shocks. Like it touches me in my body, but they feel like shocks.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever it tries to show me, it even does it on my body too. Like it's touching me, and it's all over the place. Though I do have to say one thing, my dad, when I initially told my parents, it was on I had told them on a Friday night that I was hearing voices, but it was on a Sunday. We had just finished praying the rosary, and I was feeling still shaken up when my dad, he prayed over me in the kitchen, and afterwards, later on, he mentioned this to me a few weeks back that he felt that something was trying to talk to him. And he started praying, and it went away. And he heard so it sounded like a sad male voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my dad there to back me up on that. But yeah, and then my parents, when they were out of town a few weeks ago, they were out of town, and I was by myself, just with my dog. It was on a Friday night and Saturday night when I was praying the rosary that I will feel a force on top of my head, just worried about, dancing around in my head. And there's also another thing I want to mention, that one of the earliest things I started noticing weird way back was that I see a shadow of myself. Like it's natural to see one's own shadow from whatever surface, from the light and reflecting off. But I see an extra one. And even when I go down sitting on the toilet, I see like a faint third one.
So you're seeing more than one shadow. Julie,
myself.
I'd like you, if you wouldn't mind, to just stay on the line. Okay, we're going to take a break at the top of the hour here, and then when we come back, I'd like to get not just my opinion I'm going to give you, but I would like to hear Father Chris and his take on this, because he actually works also in spiritual problem resolution. It's kind of part of the job when you're a pastor. But anyway, don't go away. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everyone, to Vestiges After Dark. We are talking with Sister Mary Joan, Father Chris Yates, Joy Keeling, and we have Julie from California on the line here. She just gave us some insight into the experiences that she's been having, and we are going to address some of those experiences in just a moment. If you have a question, comment, story for us about the paranormal, metaphysical, esoteric, religious, whatever's on your mind, you can call us right now at 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. We'll be getting ready for the second half of the show here in just a moment. Don't go away. Thank you, everyone, for waiting through the break. And we've got some more callers calling in, so don't hang up if you are on the line and on hold waiting to call into the show. Just stay right there, and we will get to you in the order that we received your call. And I don't want to miss any calls tonight because you always contribute such wonderful things to the content of this show and make it so much more interesting than if it's just me sitting here talking to you. I mean, I can be interesting, but it's more fun when we're having an actual discussion. But anyway, Julie was talking to us right before the break about some of the experiences she's having, and she's seeing faces in all sorts of different places that she looks, as well as multiple shadows that are not her own. This is an unusual thing, obviously. It's not something that is very typical. So, Julie, I'm wondering, have you ever been able to capture any of this on video? Have you been able to capture this with pictures?
No, I have not. The other thing about the shadows, they're like my own shadows, but it's very weird. Like when I'm not seeing those extra shadows, times like if I'm walking outside or even say at night, I can see like an extra outline, just whatever's attached to me, just an extra outline of my silhouette. Just when it's not apparent that the shadows are sticking out, it's just very weird. It's like there's something extra about me. But yeah, I have never been able to record anything, capture anything on video. I sense the energy. I noticed it, but it moves very fast. But I have never been able to I haven't ever able to see anything on like jump out right.
I mean, it sounds like, it could be some kind of attachment. It doesn't sound demonic to me, but it sounds like it could be an attachment that you might have picked up just randomly, that is for whatever reason sticking around you. Father Chris, what do you think?
There's a few questions I'd like to ask about it, but I guess before I do that, one question is, are you a baptized person?
Baptized? Yes, baptized Roman Catholic.
Yes. Yeah, fine. So, and also, sorry, I just want to give you some encouragement. As English ears, especially an Englishman that lives in Australia, you should be very grateful you've got a father that prays with you. That's a marvelous.
My parents are they're really. They've certainly gone more spiritually or last year. Like they're very involved. They're even part of a marriage ministry. So yeah.
Sure. Well,
yeah.
So are you a regular communicant as well? Do you go to mass?
I'm sorry.
Do you go to mass as well? Are you a regular communicant at mass?
Oh yeah, I do go to mass. I make it work to mass to go to mass. Yeah, I don't like the idea of having to make mass because then it's not something I want to go confess. You know.
Oh, sorry. You're quite right. What I should have said is, are you regularly at the mass rather than communicant? But and do you use the confessional?
Yeah, I do go to a confession. My most recent one was in April. So yeah.
Well, okay. So that's, thanks for asking those questions. I know they're quite personal, but that is the basis, the bedrock for dealing with any of this stuff. So you're a person that's actively engaged in your faith. You pray at home. You go to the confessional. All of the because of course confession and the Eucharist are the primary sacraments that deal with dark forces or entities or what have you. But I'm inclined to agree with Bishop Bryan about this. It doesn't sound like it's demonic. But it's interesting that you have these experiences when you're praying the rosary. We know that Our Lady is a powerful protection against dark forces. And so, I want to encourage you by saying you're doing the right things. I'm sorry.
I was going to think like today when I was praying the rosary, my mom and I were listening to on the radio, and then another one we started following another one on TV because on the TV they're doing it's part of the marathon for ending the COVID-19 pandemic. These rosaries.
Yeah, the rosary marathon.
And I just felt like I felt really heavy, just heavy, some pressure around me, all over me, and it's just, yeah.
Well, I think that if you look at me, then I would certainly offer to pray a blessing over you. But I think you're actually doing the right things, and having to bear with some of these battles because we don't know what kind of spirit it is. It could be one that's wanting to join you in praying the rosary. It could be one that's trying to find their way back to God. And so, I would say like Padre Pio. I mean, Padre Pio suffered a lot in his life. The stigmata and with demonic problems. But actually, it's what made him a saint. I think that. Sometimes the answer isn't to say, how can we help this go away for you, but to say, well, actually, there's some meaning in this, and I would encourage you to persevere with the faith, and I think you should tell your pastor as well. You should tell your parish priest that these things are going on, and just ask for other people to pray for you, and of course, you'll have my prayers.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's very probable, Julie, that what Father Chris said was what was on my mind too, that it could be something that is looking for help or release, and it knows that you can notice it, so it stays around you. And because you are religiously active, that tends to get their attention because they know that there's something from that they need. And so offering prayers for whoever this might be can be very helpful to you as well, including just the very simple eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. You don't really need to do anything dramatic, although if you want to do something a little bit more formal, you can do the divine office and the office of the dead.
There's also something I want to mention that, it has an effect on me that I think it even messes with my voice a little bit, like, I often find myself just clearing my throat, and sometimes when I'm talking, it's like whatever this energy is, it's just constantly there, and I think it's been affecting my voice a bit, and when it touches me, it's been also even communicating on my body, like whatever. It's the same thing that shows me. I drew some stuff to see and see what I'm trying to pay attention, see what it is showing me. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to even try to see what. I mean, try my best to draw what it is, but I don't know
Yeah,
why.
I got
Yeah.
the picture you sent me, Julie, and just if I could interject for a minute, I've been talking with Julie about this, and the three of us are pretty much on the same track as far as what she's been doing is correct. And I told her about the prayers for the dead, and I think she is possibly a sensitive, and that the dead do see her, and the reason she's seeing smiling faces is because they're happy. They're giving her, or she's giving them some kind of comfort. I think that the possibility of her being a sensitive bishop, she may need to have a little advice on how to kind of protect herself or shield herself from being overwhelmed by the dead, because I think they're drawing their energy off of her. Maybe not meaning to, but I don't think it's anything demonic either after our talk we had last week.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound demonic. Demonic doesn't really operate that way, not from the things that she's described. But yeah, I mean, honestly, as far as protection goes, there is nothing greater than confession and Eucharist, regular mass attendance, regular prayer, and an offering.
And she is very fortunate. Her whole family's she's got a support system in her entire family, which, as Father Yates said, that's a wonderful thing. 'Cause it's actually pretty rare these days.
It is rare, and it's an important part of, I think, spiritual development and protection. So that's my advice: to continue to facilitate Julie's personal relationship, and to also offer some prayers, and give us a call back in a few weeks and see if those things have made any improvements, and we'll see if there's any developments. Because anytime you make a change spiritually with the things that are going on, there can always be a modification that gives us some insight into what's going on. So those things are very helpful to us to diagnosing the issue. But try that and see where that takes you, Julie, and let us know. Calling in from the 250 area code in British Columbia. Hello, you are on the air.
Hello?
Hello? Yes.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely.
Well, I was listening, and I work as I'm in the medical field. My husband is a police officer.
Cool.
I've been taking care of patients for, oh my gosh, I'm now 54, so many moons. So I've seen and worked with patients who are, are passing, and I'm trying not to get upset because a lot of things.
Let it out.
Yeah.
Let it out.
A lot of things have been happening in the. I'm so sorry.
No, take your time.
Sure, the best way to do it. This is a place of healing. Let it out.
Thank you. So last year, I noticed that things have been. I've been hearing things, and I know I'm sound of mind, and I know I have nothing wrong with me, and my husband as well. So I've been hearing things and in my home and seeing things. I've never been scared of it, ever. And I know my husband and my daughter kind of, I had said something to them, and they kind of, it spooked them, so I never decided not to say anything anymore. So months and months go by last year, and I've been seeing more and hearing things, like people talking, but no one's there. But I just came home from work, and I hear people talking, and I'm all, I must have left the TV on. So I go check, and nothing. No one's home. So I kind of chalk it off like, maybe it's neighbors or something. But it's happened lots of times, and so when I saw a white light ball, I think you guys call them orbs.
Yeah, that's the typical
I saw
term here.
little ones. Yes, I saw little ones, like coming over towards when I come in my door, and I could see them with my naked eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked my husband and my daughter, hey, have you seen anything in the house? Or, like I was trying to make light of it so I don't spook them. And they said, no, nothing. And so, I dust and clean, and I want to make sure it's not, dust or anything, or trying to make sure I'm debunking anything and everything possible. So what I decided is to use my iPad and record so I can show my family what I'm seeing, or just have it for my own peace of mind. So I recorded on my iPad, and on it I saw orbs, and then heard people talking. What is disturbing to me is what I heard on the orbs are fine. I'm okay. I am not afraid. I don't know why, because I'm a Catholic. I believe in Jesus Christ. Absolutely. I pray every night.
Well, that's why you're not afraid, dear.
Yeah, I agree, Sister Mary. I just started to think something's not right. When I heard what was spoken on the iPad, it wasn't one person. It wasn't two people. It was like 40 people talking in my home. So I recorded everything, and I let my father, the priest here, I let him listen to or see what I was seeing. And he told me I had a gift, and I said, well, I don't know about that, but can you come over and bless my home and pray? And he said, absolutely. So on there were all these people talking, and it was disturbing because they meant my family harm. They weren't talking like whispers. They were talking like you and I are talking. You could hear them. And so I asked Father to come over and bless my house, and I showed them the orbs that I was seeing. They were both blown away, and they both came over and blessed my home. And this is just this year. They came over last year and this year, and I wanted my house blessed. Now everything was quiet and everything was great. And but then I started seeing more with my eyes, and I didn't want to frighten my family. So I decided, okay, I need, I go to Mass, I say my prayers, I actually, Father blessed my rosary and my cross that I wear, and he told me to wear it. I wear it every day. I never take it off. I wear it to bed, I wear it to the gym, I wear it to work, I wear it to everywhere. And I feel, it's not like I feel safe with it, of course, always, but I feel good. And when I started seeing and hearing more, I just decided, okay, I am going to do this recording so I can have proof and show my husband, because they were like, wait, Mom's never prayed like this before, and Mom's never, have never went, okay, you guys, I'm going to say a prayer. So Father told me to, say my prayers and whatnot. So I started realizing when I heard the recording back, but I could hear with my own ears, Father. I can hear them. And all they're asking for, all these or souls, I call them spirits and souls, they're asking me to pray for them.
And that's exactly what you need to do.
And I have been doing that, and I haven't stopped for over now. It's like new people come. It's like
you said you're around death. I mean, you work in the healthcare. I mean, are you around? Did I hear you correctly that you were around the hospitals where there was a lot of death?
Yes.
Okay, so it is a absolutely ordinary thing, very, very common. It's just a lot of medical professionals are so empirical that they sort of just ignore it, or they dismiss it, or they just don't want to deal with it, or more than likely they don't talk about it. But the fact is, anybody that works in places where death is regularly happening are going to be having constant interaction at this level. It's just we don't pay attention to it typically, so we don't see it. But it's very much real. It's very much there. And if you've just got the slightest inclination to be able to hear them, and they'll know it, and then it's like basically they all flock to you. So it is a gift. The priest that mentioned or called it a gift, he was absolutely correct. Absolutely 100% correct. Because this is an opportunity for you to intercede on their behalf. This is the part that Roman Catholic theology kind of failed to complete. It was getting there with purgatory, but unfortunately, it really kind of dropped the ball on limbo. And then it just dismissed limbo altogether now in the modern era. But it really, there is a moment, there is a period of time where there is still opportunity to confer grace upon those who are about to be lost. And those that don't, most people don't die well. Most people do not die well because we are not training them how to die well.
No, you're right. I feel 100% that you're absolutely right. When I hear them, though, what's happening, though, Father, is that it's getting stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And nothing bad, nothing evil. Yeah.
Why? Because you have probably helped some others cross, and so your light's becoming brighter. You're seen as a healer. You're a nurse, so you're seen as a healer on this side of the veil and probably the other side of the veil. And so when these spirits realize, for lack of a better term, that you have helped others and you're praying for others, they're basically gonna start flocking to you. It's like the bishop says, it's like flies to a zapper. They're attracted to it. They're attracted to your light, your beacon.
I think
so. It's going to get stronger.
Yeah, but I don't know, and I don't understand why and how I know that there are new people coming, and it's getting where I can just and I know I'm not crazy.
No, you're not. And
just,
honestly, I think
not crazy at all.
I think Joy Keeling, Joy, if you're still, I think you're still there. Hopefully you're well and you're here and can maybe give some commentary to this, because I know that you also have very much a similar gift to this, and perhaps even a little bit more, quite a bit more developed. But what insight can you provide maybe to help her to kind of hone this in such a way that she can maybe even help even more efficiently? What would you say?
Well, one of the things when I was investigating, I would hear constantly people saying, "It's dark, where's the light?" And they want help. And so I would say, these are people trying to come to you for help. There's been a whole lot of death in the past year. And a lot of people are, saying, "Oh, it wasn't that much." Well, no, it was more than 500,000 people in our country alone, not to mention all the people around the world who are dying from this thing, and it's been massive. And so there are a lot of people who are very confused because they were dying with their last thought being, "This isn't real." And so we have a massive influx of all these confused dead spirits roaming around, and they are, how many people are they coming to? Anyone who seems like a beacon. And they're coming to so many people, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle this. And so I would say, if you can get a copy of the Office of the Dead and start praying it on a regular basis.
I actually have been. I'm most definitely not afraid, and I've been saying, "Eternal Father, I offer you the most precious blood of thy divine Son, Jesus." I've been praying. I say every prayer that I could possibly think to help them, and I know that I'm helping them. But it's like Sister Mary, like you were saying,
you being overwhelmed.
It's not. Well, it's like it never stops. It's like new people
and it's
all
not
the
going
time.
to. It's not going to. People die every second of every day, but you're going to have to teach yourself to put up barriers. You know, maybe let them know, hey, okay, good. You know, hey, once a day,
I told them
this time I'll talk to you, but you've got to leave me alone. This is not healthy for me. You've got to
No,
set up your
I
barriers.
let them know that I will pray for you midnight. And for some reason it's like that time at 12 or at 1 o'clock in the morning is when they need me to pray for them. And it's nothing ever scary has happened, like evil or anything like that. I don't feel that. It's just all these people are, I mean, Sister Mary, they're everywhere. Not just in my home, but they're outside. They're everywhere. I was outside with my dog and sitting there just by myself relaxing, and I did a recording because I wanted to record the dog, and on the recording when I played it back, a woman said, and I heard her with my own naked ear, but I didn't say anything because my next question to you is, I thought we weren't supposed to talk to the dead, but how can I help them if I don't know? You know, this woman is asking me, can you please take me to my home?
Well, in reality, theologically speaking, it's necromancy that we're not supposed to do. We're not supposed to conjure the dead.
Yeah, exactly.
But the dead,
I'm not conjuring anybody.
Yeah, the dead aren't, you know, and particularly conjuration as it applied in biblical terms was really like pulling someone back from having already crossed over. And you're talking like resurrecting the shades, the residual energy that has now rested, and then you're sort of disturbing the rest by reanimating that energy, which is not supposed to happen. That's a very different thing than a person who is just recently died, but is incapable of crossing over because of what we've already talked about, which is a pervasive lack of spiritual development in our society. And death is everywhere. Okay, the death is the ultimate inevitability of all things. We are all dying. We will all die, and it is happening constantly, everywhere, all the time. The fact of the matter is, sensitives like yourself are going to be hyper aware of this, particularly when you're working in a field where you are coming into physical contact with it all the time. So absolutely putting down boundaries is a necessary part of this, and it's difficult to do. It's difficult in the beginning because your being somewhat empathic, which is a natural side of this, is going to be something that makes it kind of happen because you're feeling in sympathy with the emotions that they now are, because that's ultimately what ghosts ultimately are: instinctual feelings, residual energy that is sort of the last moments that they had, and most of those last moments are going to be fear, pain, suffering, and not pleasant, and that even creates a greater impact. Add to it a year that was completely facilitated on the basis of fear. So, you know, death, fear, all these things are compounding to create a superstorm of spiritual energy and disaster that now you're in, you know, it's impacting you because you're picking up on that. So setting those boundaries is the way that you do this. So what I would suggest that you do, one of the first things, and let's ask Father Chris too in a moment here what he thinks, but what I would suggest you do is get some holy water. You're Catholic, so it should be fairly easy to do. I mean, I know in Canada,
I have holy water by my bed. I spray my mouth, my husband, and my daughter every night.
Okay. So what I want you to do, when you are being disturbed and you don't want to be disturbed, I want you to get that holy water out. I want you to say the prayer, eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. And then I want you to sprinkle the holy water around your room, and I want you to tell them they cannot cross that path. Okay, that you have done what you can do for them tonight, and that you will offer prayers tomorrow at the same time, but not to disturb you and to not enter into this room or this home, however you want to do. If you want to designate certain places, you can do that too. They will respond to this, particularly if you already made...
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah. And they will respect that. Father Chris, is there anything that you could perhaps, you know, add to it that I might not have thought of?
Oh, no, sure. I mean, I really wanted to just say two things, really. One is, give thanks to God for your local parish priest, because not
Right.
many would have responded in that way, in my experience. So
Right.
what you need to do is get your claws into him and never let him leave the parish.
I don't.
Write to the bishop and say,
Oh, he's
he must
wonderful.
always be
He's
my
wonderful.
parish priest. So,
Agreed.
So that's one thing. And to give thanks to him and to pray for blessing on him, of course, in his ministry.
Yes.
The same thing I just wanted to say was the nursing profession. It is absolutely no mistake that hospitals and nurses used to be the domain of the monastics.
Mm-hmm.
That it
Yeah.
was nuns. There's a reason they're called sister. In hospitals,
Yep.
it was monastic communities that cared for people and with them when they died. And part of the need for that is because death is not the end. And of course, in those monasteries, they would have a very strong devotion to offering their lives for the holy souls. And it doesn't matter whether we want to talk about purgatory or limbo. It really, for these purposes, it doesn't matter. That was a strong core of their vocation. And of course, having replaced that with a secular version, thank God you are open to these things and able to be someone who they can go. But I'm not surprised you're overwhelmed. And I do think what Bishop Bryan said, and Sister Mary as well, is that you do need to make sure that you have periods where you can recover your own sanity, where
I do.
You can't help someone if you're exhausted. You're a mum, you know that.
Yeah. I don't, I do let them know I'll pray for you after they all leave, because I have it recorded. I can send it to you, Bishop.
I would love to hear it.
It's pretty amazing. Sister Mary, you'd be blown away. I let my husband see it, and I just wanted them to know that I wasn't cuckoo.
Of course.
I was trying to show them that this is what I'm seeing with my own naked eye, and I want you to see what I see if I record it. And they both saw it, and they were like, their mouths were like, their jaws were on the floor. They were like, wait, what? And they just were blown away. But I don't want them to be frightened.
Yeah, and fear would fear would actually be counterproductive to the whole thing. So I would definitely continue on with the course of action. Send that to us. Well, I would like to hear it. office@nicolane.org. Just it's on the website if you can't. If you want to, get refreshed on how to spell it. Sometimes Nicolane can trip people up, but send it on, and we'd like to look at it and try these things, and maybe in a couple months, or actually in a few weeks, you'd start to see some changes, and let us know. Call us back and let us know how it's been affected.
Yeah, I sure will. But the thing is, though, is that it's only gotten stronger. Even when they came and blessed the house, that was wonderful. But now I'm aware more when they're around. Just 2 days ago, this orb came at me, but it wasn't like it had color to it, and it was in the daytime. My husband was sitting on the sofa. It came right at me, and I'm all whoa, and my husband's like, what? And I go, no, nothing. I just didn't want to upset anybody.
You may have to make your boundary your entire house.
Yeah, I was just thinking
your house
that.
Is off limits.
Yeah, make the house off
your
limits.
house is off limits. They'll come to them, but your house it should be a safe zone.
Yeah, I feel that way. It's just that no matter where I go now, for a walk or whatever, now it's like you can the only way I can say it is people don't see things, and they're maybe closed-minded, but they don't even know what's in front of them. That's the only way I can say it, is that I don't know why I'm able to see more now. It's just in the last 2 years, everything's changed.
Yeah, well, because that can happen. Certainly. It can just be the result of truly just parts of your nature start to develop and wake up. And if you're already a somewhat spiritual person, then you always have to be prepared for that evolution to happen. Because it is an evolutionary process that happens internally as well as externally. And,
Yeah.
you know, these kinds of realizations were natural to the ancients, as we talked about in the first half of the show. They only
Yeah.
seem strange to us now because we are such an empirical society, and we condition our children to not focus on those things. So they don't know what to do. People don't know what to do with it when it happens. It's always happened.
Yeah.
It's just now we don't really have the framework for working with it. So, you know, just like
Yeah.
Father Chris said, the church was the medical field was the domain of the church. It was never meant to be a for-profit agency or corporation like it is in the United States. It was never meant to be in secular hands. It was always supposed to be part of a holistic approach that would aid people, because it's one of the corporal works of mercy. I mean, healing the sick, you know, caring for the dying is part of the Christian mission, and it was never meant to be given over to secular society. But you know, now it is, and fortunately, you are an individual who can walk the tightrope between both realms, and you're just going to have to get more proficient at being able to set those boundaries down. But once you do so,
I will.
it should taper off. You'll always look, once you unlock the I call it the psychic sensor. Once you unlock it, it doesn't come back on. Okay, so you're never going to be able to go back to the way you saw things before this started happening, but you will be able to learn to live with it quite organically and quite naturally, because realistically, it's our natural condition to be able to do this. It is less natural to not be able to see the spiritual reality that's around us. We're supposed to be connected to it more than we are.
Well, my husband asked, "Can you turn it off?" And I said, "No, I don't know. It's just getting. I don't want to tell him it's getting stronger. I didn't want to upset him, because he, you know, my daughter and my husband were like, you know, you've never ever been one to, like, you know, push God on anybody or pray out loud or you know, none of that. I mean, my family believes in Jesus Christ. We pray, we do our you know, but I pray at night when everyone's asleep, and I help them. But Sister Mary, are you you know, I did let them know I will do this again in a month. I will do this again. Like setting boundaries, but but the only thing is, it's almost like I feel like when I know they're around me, not just when I can see them, but I feel them, and I don't know if that's bad or good, because it makes me feel like I can't catch my breath. And I know
you've
nothing's
really
medically wrong with me, like
you're
physically
just being
or
overwhelmed spiritually.
That's all it
you
is.
just definitely got to be very firm about your boundaries. I would definitely move the boundaries to include your entire house.
Yeah.
And it will, like the bishop said, it will settle at some point. But I mean, you know, the door's been kicked open, so now you're going to have to kind of do damage control.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have been blessed. You're in a very elite group of people. I mean, and honestly, this gift, it may have just manifested, but you're probably meant to do this your entire life. I don't know one single person that got into nursing that didn't have some kind of spiritual gift as a healer.
Yeah, that's what my husband was saying, is that well, we've been together for so long, and he said that you've always told me stuff when we were younger, but I have forgotten about telling him anything. But you know,
life
how you
gets
kind
in
of
the way.
It does. You know,
life gets in the way.
What I'd like you to do is to set those boundaries. You know, and I'd agree with Sister Mary Joan. The whole house, they can't come home with you at this point. You need to have a reset place. You are entitled to your spiritual privacy as well. And it might take a few times before you start to see the transition to where that starts to happen, or it might be instantaneously. It's possible, but set those boundaries down.
So where do I pray for them though?
Yeah.
Like outside, or
or I mean, I'm imagine the hospital has a chapel too. Can you not use it?
Yeah, it's just I just don't want people to know about what I'm doing.
No, they don't
because
necessarily have
people-
to know. I mean, you don't have to be very vocal about this. I mean, you can go into the chapel and pray quietly.
I don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be very private about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's honestly no one else's dadgum business anyway.
It isn't.
I know.
They shouldn't be worried about what you're doing. What you're doing is good works. So
Yeah.
do it and don't worry about what other people think.
No, it's just like I have a group of other doctors and nurses that we all, you know, we see things and hear things, but we just don't tell anybody else. You just don't do that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's
having been in law enforcement 26 years and having intimate relationships with the medical field, you know, cops and nurses. Of course, your husband being a cop, you know, we're two peas in a pod. So we all see it. We all talk about it, and that's who you can confide in. Is other people who've been through it.
Yeah, that does help a lot. It's just I think I just don't understand why it's getting. Pardon me. I just don't know why it's getting stronger.
Well, that's just part of the way it works. Honestly, it really is. It's just spiritual development there's consequences to it, and there's things that and
because what you're doing is working.
Yeah, and it is effective. So, continue with what you were told. Continue to work through those boundaries and set them, you know, definitively, and no exceptions. And then in a few weeks, call us back. Let us know what has changed. But yeah, that's all you can do for right now. But I think you are definitely called to this. I think it's absolutely 100% a vocation at this point, and it is something that the Holy Spirit is guiding you towards accomplishing, and it's necessary for your own spiritual growth to follow through with it. I'm calling in from the 208 area code in Idaho. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello, my name's Mateo, and I'm actually Paula's son.
Mateo.
Oh, hello, Mateo.
Hey, Paula's son.
Hi, and I have a question for you guys, and I'm kind of a nerd about things like Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy and stuff, and I have I play this game called Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it.
Oh, yeah. Very familiar with it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. But basically, there's I know that you've explained jinns and elementals before, and in the game they explain them. I feel like they explain them very different than the way you explain them, I guess. But when they how they project elementals specifically is they bring they literally bring the two elements together and then create a creature out of it. And I'm and then they can disappear and then reappear, and I'm I don't think that's how it actually goes.
Sounds great for a game, though.
Yeah, I mean,
it is.
Games, they use archetypes and create models around those archetypes in order to create, I guess, a canon or a story, a story that has a cohesive canon where there's rules that make the story work. And in a game, that's really necessary. Joy Keeling, she plays the Dungeons and Dragons. Do you still do those, Joy? Do you still get out together for those meetings?
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
I mean, I would imagine that some of the magical creatures that you encounter there are also portrayed differently than how the elementals are in real life, would you not say?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
they're made to fit the storyline.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would account for some of the differences that you're seeing. But is that your question, or is that just part of what you were?
Well, I mean, I guess that was kind of part of the question. I kind of expected that answer, but it's I guess I can't really think of what I'm trying to ask specifically. But
did you want any similarities?
Yeah, that's a little if there's any similarities between the two, maybe I guess are elementals actually made between two elements, or or more, or I'm not, I guess.
Well, the more complex a being is, the more elemental diversity is going to exist. So the reason why we talk about, like, you've probably heard me mention that with elementals, you have the jinn, which might be the highest state of an elemental, highly intelligent, highly aware,
and the most arrogant,
very powerful. Yeah. And then you have like elementals that are basically nothing more than non-corporeal mosquitoes. They can cause infection, spiritual infection. They can cause spiritual illness, but they're not really even aware of themselves. They just sort of go through the movements of the universe, and if you come in contact with them, they might make you sick. There might be detrimental deleterious effects, but at the same time, there could be benefits too if you come in contact with the right kind of energetic elementals, because they all orient towards a particular frequency. Either they are oriented towards the creative faculty or the reabsorption faculty, and creative faculty tends to help us, and reabsorption faculty tends to make us sick. So, there's always going to be the orientation as well as the sophistication. So the sophistication will always include multiple forms of multiple elemental factors. So that's why human beings are as sophisticated as we are, is because we are made up of multiple archetypal or aggregates that are oriented towards one particular element over another one. Now, there's always going to be a ruling element. So that's why you have the sun sign in astrology. That's essentially what the model is trying to tell you, is that, like, for me, I was born in July, so I'm a Cancer. That's a water sign. So my ruling element, Sister Mary Joan as well, her ruling element is Cancer. So it's water. Cancer is a water sign, so water is the ruling element. But, my moon is in Capricorn, and my rising sign is actually in Sagittarius. So that's Capricorn's earth, and Sagittarius is fire. So even though those are not the ruling elements, I'm still made up of multiple elemental factors. And some people will be very much oriented towards just one type of element, where you might see 4 or 5 planets, all the same element. And there are, just as it is with human beings, there are high-level elementals that also have those same combinations and orientations that gear towards one ruling factor, but also have other aspects as well. Now, the purest forms, okay, are going to just be one, and that's where you get down to like the traditional notions, like the gnomes, for example, which represent the earth, the salamanders, which represent fire. Those are just pure element. That's it. The only element they are. But as far as creating new ones, this does come from the interaction of elemental factors. I mean, it's basically, essentially spiritual genetics, if you want to really pin it down to something that we can relate to on an empirical level. It works the same way that genetics works. When you look at, chromosomes, and determining, genetic factors or proclivities, whether it be eye color or hair color, or whether it be, whether or not a person is prone towards one illness or another, whether a person's got a certain amount of height or predisposed towards obesity. These are all genetic factors that are made up of these aggregate patterns that at the corporeal level are basically genes, essentially, is what they are. But there's non-corporeal aspect to that. And that's really ultimately elemental orientation, and how those things combine together in the aggregates to produce what is essentially a human being. For non-corporeal beings, elementals, and other types of creatures that are not things that are part of the physical world in the same way that we are, they will spawn very much by those same processes, only at that spiritual level. So to a certain extent, the game is not completely wrong. It's creating a model, I think, that makes the game work. But ultimately, it's
a take.
Yeah, it's a take on something. So it's like there's a. Did you ever see the movie? Oh goodness gracious! It's M. Night Shyamalan. Unbreakable. Did you ever see Unbreakable?
Ooh.
Oh, Unbreakable. Yes, I have.
Okay. Do you remember that part where they were talking about, I don't even remember which character said it, but he referred to them as exaggerations of the truth, because they were like kind of like superheroes, but not quite. They were just mundane enough that you almost wouldn't notice in them, but they had this superhero kind of characteristic that made them more than they are, but it was so subtle that you hardly could notice unless you were directly involved in their lives. And so it was like they were exaggerations. So comic books were exaggerations of the truth, like the stories of Batman, Superman, these things, exaggerations of actual things. And that's really very true, archetypally. Obviously, we don't have necessarily a Superman, who is in charge of everything. I mean, he can do anything and is impervious to, being attacked. Lasers coming out of his eyes and X-ray vision. But at the same time, archetypally, the very structure of these non-corporeal experiences that are completely from the realm of the archetypes, that can be tapped into, and seemingly superhuman aspects can come out of it. And that's really where sometimes these miracles come from, and these superhuman feats that we hear about, these amazing things that occur, all come back down to these very basic principles that are at work within the entire foundation of reality itself. So there's always an exaggeration of the truth there in the stories of the archetypes, because the archetypes are truer than we are, and that's what esoteric mysticism is all about. I guess we'll have to do more on this because we're at the end of the show, but I want to thank Sister Mary Joan. I want to thank Joy Keeling and Father Chris Yates for coming on.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we'll hear more from Father Chris on June 8th is when we're going to have him on exclusively. He'll talk about his work, and we'll find out more about who he is and what he does. And next week we have Josh Warren to talk about UFOs and the recent disclosures. So you don't want to miss this show.
Get ready for that one.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. But thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. It has been a great show. I'll see you next week. Take care. God bless, and be kind to each other.
Seconds. 60 seconds. 10 seconds. Thank you for using